Hey, it's Izzy from Valuart. Welcome to another episode with the Valuart Podcast. Today we have a special guest, digital artist Mark Wilson, also known as Die with the Most Likes. Die with the Most Likes was the very first artist to mint in the FakeWhale vault and has an upcoming Valuart Solos curated by FakeWhale, with two special artworks, part of the new FakeWhale Cross that we'll talk all about in the interview. Hey, Die, thank you so much for being here today with us.
Yeah, of course. I'm super stoked to talk to Valuart and the FakeWhale team.
First, I want to ask, how have the last few weeks been since we were greeted, broke the internet?
Yeah.
That was kind of the first question I wanted to ask.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, it was insane.
Yeah, it was crazy. And it wasn't really even planned. I mean, I talk with Zach quite a bit, Super Zach, shout out to him. And so he really loved that Walmart Savior piece. It was a psychotic piece, an examination of, aimless American suffering, like a lot of mine do. But that thing was leveled up by 10, right? It was an absolute nightmare. So when he approached me and said, "Hey, let's do this thing in Rare," I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'm in." I love the Super Rare platform. They've been so helpful to me. So when that sale went through and it came through as I think $55 million from the Super Rare bot, I was like, what the hell? I'm like, all right, I'm going to head out to Dave & Buster's now with this $55 million and start going nuts. So it was so funny. And then, DM started blowing up, Twitter started blowing up. And I was supposed to go out to dinner that night with my wife, and I'm sitting at the table eating shitty Indiana linguine. So we went out to an Italian spot, which is hilarious because, we met in Italy, and there's an obviously incredible pasta and everything is incredible there. Now I'm back in Indiana. So I'm sitting there eating this horrific bowl of linguine, just answering all these DMs "So you're a millionaire now. What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm drinking Carlo Rossi and eating linguine," even though it was a completely false, it was a completely false narrative anyway, but it was really funny and comical. And even if it were for just a moment, it felt pretty rad to be amongst, Beeple and those other kind of insane artists. Obviously we're both huge Sky Golpe fans. So to be amongst all of that was very cool feeling. I was stoked about it. It felt great. And it felt just surreal and hilarious. And it was an incredible day.
And also I saw that yesterday you started getting into the fall vibes with pumpkin spice ice boots. No, Ugg boots.
That's right. Yeah, one of my favorite things to do, and really just creatively, it just cracks me up, is to make really shitty products that would I could maybe see people consuming at some point. Like if Starbucks came out and said, "You can eat your boot now, it's pumpkin spice," and people would just line up outside of Starbucks and say, "Well, shit, now I'm just eating a pumpkin spice boot, I guess. That's what I'm being served." So yeah, I'm big time fall vibes. I'm putting pumpkin spice latte in my DMT. I'm putting pumpkin spice in just virtually everything, yogurt, bath water, it's getting in everything. So I'm all in on fall. I'm ready to go.
And also since we were talking about that, a lot of your pieces, they actually have references to a lot of corporations, brands, typically American. Can you explain kind of what kind of relationship you have with them, the kind of view you want to give to people who are looking at your pieces?
Yeah, it's really funny. I was talking to my wife about this exact thing. We were out sitting in a Taco Bell, funny enough, outside of Indianapolis. We were coming back into town from a trip. And there's a certain beauty to the convenience of American life and, the ability to consume things in an extremely cost-efficient manner where I'm crushing an entire meal of what is, a sister of beef. I don't know what the Taco Bell standard is for beef at this point. I remember it was, I think, dog food grade at a certain point, which is fine with me as long as it's smothered in enough nacho cheese. But there's a certain beauty to the convenience. And I really love and I'm fascinated with that beauty and that particular eternal funneling of goods, of food, of everything on demand all the time in this really perpetual swarm of both content and products. There's a certain beauty to the efficiency of it all, really. And so I am obsessed with that aspect of it. But then on the downside of that is, when it's served up to you, when it's sitting in that slot pen for you to start consuming from, there's a tendency for us as humans to never stop. So we just sit there and we consume and we consume and we consume. And in many ways, it's really chiseling away at the core of who we are as human beings, I think. because we're under this constant onslaught and this constant kind of pressure to consume. And underneath that pressure, we cave and we do it. And without the ability to kind of digest what is being shoved into us, it really just makes this horrific transactional nature of, stuff being shoved in, undigested, evacuated into a toilet. And that's just kind of our existence. So there's both a beauty and an immense sadness to it that I am completely obsessed with and I love exploring.
And has this always been like, even before you got into NFTs in March last year, has this always been an inspiration in your artworks before?
Yes.
Getting into, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. In inspiration in art and in life in many ways. Cause like, I'll just sit there and, we'll be at a fast casual restaurant, or let's say you're sitting at a Chili's 2 in an airport and somebody's just hammering down a bloomin' onion in like 5 64-ounce Blue Moons. You just kind of sit there and stare and just say like, what is going on here? This is nuts. Like this kind of cycle of consumption and indifference to dissent is a really fascinating thing. So in many ways, like I oftentimes describe my art and my approach to creating art is more of a documentarian because I'm kind of just documenting what I see. Some of it is with the absurdist skew, like for instance, the UGG boot is pumpkin spice and people are just eating like shit covered boots at a certain point, but it's not that far off from reality, which is both the sad and like interesting part of, I think, the art that I make, maybe.
You gotta put it like this is the season where you're gonna start seeing all of that, like the spicy lattes from pumpkin lattes from Starbucks. You also had like that was also in the piece, the Starbucks.
Yeah. And I made one yesterday that was, it was an all natural beauty product from Burt's Beeswax, but they just
that's the other one I saw.
It was trying to get
Sephora.
So bees were getting too expensive, so they started using flies, and we just said, sounds great. These flies are going to make my lips look as voluptuous as ever. These like flies.
At the end of the day, they're always going to be able to sell us to us. Like,
exactly. Exactly. We don't care. It's like, sweet. The flies are non-GMO. I'm going to smother up my lips and let them, shine in the sun. So
in some kind of ways, I'm kind of guilty too, because I just started putting some snail slime on my face.
Oh. Is it working? What is it?
I mean, it does give a glow. If that can inspire you for a piece.
Yeah, right.
Korean skincare stuff. So marketing got me in that sense.
Yeah.
So, and when was like the moment, the exact moment that it hit you, right? This consumption.
Yeah.
Like, do you recall like the exact moment?
For sure. Yeah. Well, it really started, it's interesting enough. So about 6 or 7 years ago, I created a piece that was kind of the genesis of my name itself. So Die With The Most Likes. It was a bunch of kind of old, decrepit people in the last moments of their forgettable life, sitting in a hospital room, and people, keeping them alive or, hammering them with the final bits of empty adoration they would receive on social media. And, it was just this really kind of sad dystopian look at our desire for acknowledgement and legacy being tied to that acknowledgement, even though it's just a bunch of strangers. And it's very peculiar. It's a very peculiar thing to seek and be sought after, but we all do it. And it's a very natural feeling. But within that kind of desperation for acknowledgement and to be the savior of some random internet stranger, I kind of started to really explore consumption on a broader level. So it was that kind of overall mentality I was looking at, and then everything's kind of started to fall into that, where it was like, wow, this is insane. We're looking to essentially gorge ourselves on anything imaginable. So then it just spiraled off into this kind of really entire perception of reality that, when I'm looking around and when I'm observing people, or I'm observing different ads, or daytime television is a big inspiration for me. So when I'm looking at like personal injury ads or anything like that, I'm like, this is crazy. And so those really are distilled, or rather were birthed from that initial piece, and have kind of transcended or transpired from kind of that initial thought of consumption.
Well, that definitely answers a question that I was about to ask you, which was what was the inspiration, right, every day. And now that you mentioned also the commercials, these days I saw you publish a piece of like a scraper on the foot. So that kind of, I can only imagine like what the
Yeah.
the, the commercial was about. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because, well, I think we'll get into this a little bit later. My obsession with ground beef, of course, but the idea of just the idea of the absurdity behind saying, well, it was good as a pumice stone, but what if it was made of beef? And it's just like, I don't know if it's any better, but then no one's going to dispute it because it's shown on the TV, it's shown in our iPad, it's in our Twitter feed. Somebody did it once, somebody with 1.3 million followers, some influencer who's, sanded over their entire face and removed every single crevice and wrinkle to become this indistinguishable blob. And we say, well, they look good. I'm going to start shaving my foot with a beef stone. So that's what we do,
Maybe you're gonna be the precursor definitely of it.
I know, right?
And also, you're a writer.
Yes.
Your pieces are always accompanied by poetry. That's how I would define it.
Yeah.
And how like what is this relationship between the written part and the visual part in your pieces?
So you froze for a second there. Are you just talking about the accompaniment of words and pieces and how they kind of inspire each other?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So really, it's an interesting process. Really, what I generally do is I have these kind of fits of madness before I go to sleep every night, where like I have all these crazy ideas, all this stuff comes to me, and I have this notepad that's probably is 5,000 or 6,000 words of. I mean, it would be unintelligible to anyone else, and oftentimes when I look at it, I say, I can't believe I thought whatever it was, some psychotic thought that had to do with like a combination of product or, decline of humanity or something. But really, I'll look at that and then I'll sketch out the piece itself. And then generally what I'll do is based on that sketch, I'll write, the microfiction or short prose or poetry with it, and really create that story. And then that story propels the visual component of it. So, so oftentimes, I'll write this story and, really reflect on the horrific sadness or mundanity or, absurdity or anything like that, and then within that reflection comes the visual component of things, and it's kind of a realization of those words in many ways. So it's really cool to see that marriage and to see people recognize it. I'm super pumped about it because really I started out mainly writing, and I really thought that was my avenue to potentially be the next Hudson News, New York Times best-selling Dan Brown or something, even though I don't write books like that. My books are very, very different. Although I did write one under I created an alter ego for my first book and wrote the entirety of the book in an alter ego, which was a hilarious thing. And it was meant to be kind of a obvious satire of those kind of Hudson News type novels. But
What is it called?
It's called An Eye for an Eye and Your Other Eye and the Rest of Your Family. And so it was written in a sense where it was a stupid, New York Times best-selling psychological crime, every single buzzword you could possibly imagine thrown into one thing. And my plan was to infiltrate varying airports and just put it in Hudson News shelves, like as a guerrilla marketing tactic, and essentially just ruin people's flights when they picked it up thinking it was one of those books. And then they were just forced to read it their entire flight. That was like my main goal, is to just ruin people's days. But with the writing, it's been really interesting. Like I've always created art, but never had any real expectation that it would do anything other than accumulate 2 likes from pornography bots on Instagram. So to have that kind of transpire and then to have people really read my pieces, I still don't really have words to describe it. I don't really describe happiness super well. So I'll just leave it at that it's insane. And I find it to be very cool and very, it's just, it really words. I really don't have any words for how cool it feels. Yeah.
Also feels really cool reading them. Every time I see, your pieces come up on Twitter, I always like focus on the words and then look at the piece again, then the words, and I really dive into it.
Thank you.
So, really, really love it. And this is a question also I wanted to ask, with this creative process and the outcome, how would you define your style? that you mentioned has been a style that you've had even before entering the crypto art scene?
Ooh, that is a really good question. It's been described as serial killer adjacent, I would say, in terms of like the line work and stuff. It is very scratchy. It's very raw. It's really, I think the style itself, I would say, is purposely unfinished in many ways, and it's very. So the way I look at it, and you'll see in a lot of the pieces where, sometimes the eyeballs are even missing and you can see the background in the back of the piece itself. So really it's kind of an examination of our descent as human beings and the inability for us to, communicate adequately or to be genuine at all, and essentially just being propped up by, whatever it is that's going on behind us, being propped up by strip malls, being propped up by stupid conversations about the weather or anything like that. It's just these sagging meat mounds that refuse to collapse only because we're stuck in that cycle of transaction. That's our only reason to exist. So in many ways, by having those eyes missing or having the eyes constantly be huge and open with that pie eye, always looking to consume, that's another kind of, I think, stylistic uniqueness in my pieces that's very recognizable, I think. But I don't know that I have like a super firm grasp on the overall, I guess, identifiable style. I think it's mainly just decay, descent, and indifference in that descent. So I think that's the main point I always want to get across, is that everyone in the piece is totally indifferent. Nobody cares what's going on. It could be something very beautiful happening to the person. It's rare. Or it could be something horrific. And in those moments of horror, the person is still just kind of has a stupid smile on their face. They're just happy to be there. They're just hanging out. Right. Just they have nothing. They have nothing left to give. And that's how many of us feel a lot of times. So it's been cool to see it resonate as well.
Absolutely. And you have a Valuart Solos curated by FakeWhale coming up. Can you tell us more about the pieces you chose for this solos?
Yes, for sure. I'm so pumped about these pieces. So they're both Disney adjacent pieces. So one of them has to do with dying on a Disney cruise ship, surrounded by people's favorite characters. So essentially it's this couple who is trying to save their marriage, and they're slowly falling asleep to the hum of their CPAP machines that's keeping them awake, as their body tries to fail them because of sleep apnea. And there's these characters behind them that are just applauding their efforts, in their dying last moments. And it's really quite sad. So
like you said, though, like we just said, they're still there, blissful.
Yeah, right. They're still hanging. Yeah, they're the hum of that CPAP machine is all they need to keep a smile on their face. And there's like, a K Jewelers box and a bunch of other crap around there that would, give the indication that they're still happy enough to consume, but at the same time, they're dying on that boat. And, but the sound of the applause of those characters in back is going to make that death.
That's enough for them.
Well, right. Exactly. It's adequate. So. It's an adequate way to die. And then the other piece is about our collective descent. So I talk about descent a lot, but kind of just that failure is still movement. It's something that I'm constantly trying to explore as well, but I consider failure as important as success. And, the thing that is the most hated and the most, I guess, biggest parasite to an artist is stagnation, right? Like being stagnant and just sitting there and doing nothing and cranking shit out that people have no reaction to. And it just goes into the pie eyes that I talked about and out of the open hole into a neglected toilet. That is my worst nightmare as an artist. I want somebody to feel sad or happy or disgusted or really any feeling in the entire world. So with this piece, it's a group of people who are on Splash Mountain, a Disney World ride, and essentially they're going down it huffing duster and huffing spray paint from bags. And it's really about that being the best moment of their entire life. So there's a poetry piece that accompanies it, and it just kind of says, our descent wasn't like any others. And that's kind of how it starts. And it's really about these people cherishing their own decline and really longing for that moment where they can finally listen to their aorta collapse in their favorite easy chair watching America's Got Talent. So they're both very, very sad pieces, and they're really cool and paired really well. So I'm really stoked for people to see them.
Cool. And you also have a special piece for FakeWhale Cross. Can you tell us more about that too?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, those are going to be both the pieces for FakeWhale Cross. So
Those will be pieces. Okay.
yeah. So one of those will exist on Object, and one of those will exist on Foundation. So yeah, it'll be a cool pairing on those. And then I do have another FakeWhale piece coming in October. That might be the one you were referencing, and that one is a collaboration with Xerox, who is this absolutely incredible Canadian artist. And that one is an examination of the last moments of memory leaving a person's mind right before they forget to breathe and ultimately pass away. So that one is really actually, I think, I create a lot of very sad pieces. That one might be the opus in terms of sadness, because there isn't really any type of consumerism. There isn't any type of like American culture in it. It's a very bleak piece without any types of my standard kind of logo exploitation and stuff. It's very, very sad, and he added this beautiful kind of heartbeat glitch to it that is that's going to really pulverize some people, I think.
Can't wait to see that one.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's going to be one that focuses solely on feelings in a certain sense.
Yeah,
Not
right.
that the ones don't now, because there's but
no, you're dead on there. It's like it's a deviation from feelings mixed with the other stuff, and just a straight up examination on like the feeling, and something that I went through personally, and really trying to cope, figure out, reckon with, what that was. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we're super excited to see that piece.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on multi-chain jobs and the vision FakeWhale is pursuing in this direction?
Yeah. It's a great question. And so I love, the thing about FakeWhale is it cuts out all of the idiotic politics and bullshit that accompanies a lot of the things in this space. And it says, hey, if the art is incredible and if it makes you feel something, that's what we're after. That's what we want. And that's the only thing we want. It's exclusive to that. So in many ways, the cross-chain effort that they're putting on is a really awesome reflection as an artist to say, art is going to be art. The things that I create are the things that I make, and that's just where it ends. It doesn't matter where it's minted. It doesn't matter what it goes for. The fact that it was created and birthed from my fingers or eyes or imagination is adequate enough for an artist, right? So I think is us as artists, I think the dream is obviously to not die alone doing something we hate, working a 9-to-5 job, which I still work a stupid ass job that I fucking hate, creating digital waste. But it's like, to pull out the tendency to judge or tendency for judgment or interpretation of the chain itself, or the price misconceptions or anything like that, and just say, hey, this artist created these two psychotic pieces. There's no difference in the pieces. They are both beautiful portrayals of sadness and decline and descent. They're just in two different places, and you can have them in either way. So I really love that, making an agnostic view of, where creations can live. They can live virtually everywhere, like, on chain, off chain. I could make one of these into a poster and put it up in outside of a glory hole in a Chili's too at the airport we were just talking about, and it would be just as beautiful there too. So I really dig what that is, and just saying, fuck it, creation for the sake of creation is vital for any artist and for anyone in this space for sure.
Definitely agree. So you see, in your opinion, also other platforms taking on this example in the future?
I could, yeah. And really, I'm thinking in 10 years, it will not matter at all. I think there's just going to be one massive marketplace where you can buy and sell things in whatever crypto you want. So in many ways, it's an acceleration of what is an inevitable future in my mind, right? So I think that it's a jump in almost a prophecy or foreseeing what's going to happen in 10 years. So it's a great case study and a way to kind of again accelerate into what will be our inevitable future as artists and collectors.
Lovely. And last question. For somebody just getting to know your artworks, they might ask themselves, why meat? What would you answer to somebody who says, why meat?
Yeah. So meat represents so much, I think that the obvious parallel between us and meat is right there. And it's been done, and it's not a novel idea that we're somehow just meat sacks sitting around kind of waiting to oxidize in the sun. Or maybe it hasn't been done. I don't know. I feel like it maybe has, but either way, yeah. So there's that portion of it. And then there's also just the comedic portion that ground beef exists at all. And I think that's really what drew me to it. Like to think that an entire animal's existence has been distilled into what is essentially pink spaghetti wrapped in plastic with like a discount tag slapped on it by an alcoholic butcher is psychotic to me. And I eat meat. Like I like meat, but just the fact that that's how we decided to portray what that animal was going to look like and sell, and it's somehow normal that we just say, oh, it's a bunch of animal parts. Sounds great. Throw it in the cart and let's just throw it on the grill and eat it. It's really comical, the absurdity of it. Like to just, I don't know. I just feel like I almost feel like if it wouldn't exist now, if those parts were just what they were, if it was just like, here's like a kidney or whatever it is, and you were buying that, I almost feel like it's less absurd than grounding it all up and then shoveling it into this form. So I'm obsessed with just the humor behind that, to be honest, and the absurdity behind that. And also, it is a reflection, of course, on our desire to consume, the perpetual and or the perpetual consumption that we all experience, and also just the kind of, I guess, just stupidity of many people in terms of somehow viewing something that's made of beef to be better than something else. And just like, an examination of our own stupidity, saying, well, if it's made of beef, it's got to be good. Let's do that. So, eye drops made of beef, I think they'd be better. Let's do that. Or, whatever it is, toothpaste. Well, if it's made of beef, it's probably better than whatever it was. And I just feel like that's such a hilarious concept, and something that I could see happening in 5 to 10 years as well. Like, just given the current decline of our, IQ, the current decline of just like our ability to discern, what's reality or not from marketing and all that stuff. So it's going to happen. I think beef's going to be everywhere.
And what about the fake beef? Because now there's a lot of products manufactured. What's your take on that? Have you ever has it been a source of inspiration already?
I know, right?
Why? Like a vegan edition?
Right. Well, I've had the fake beef, and I'm okay with it, other than the fact that I think it's oddly very unhealthy. Like, I think I read, or maybe I just read an article about it, but I think that it has like a ton of cholesterol, and I think it's got a ton of like horrific stuff within it. So I'm looking forward to the day where they can manufacture that lab grown beef. I'm trying to think of the artist that's doing this, but there's an incredible artist who's doing like still shots of beef being grown in labs, and it's really one of the most sickening and fascinating things I've ever seen. But I'm looking forward to the day when I can just go to my local lab and pick up a big slab of knuckle steak and throw it on the grill and eat that. So I'm fired up. But yeah, the fake beef, and it's really funny when somebody posts, I get a lot of Twitter responses to my beef products, and they say, well, come on, like, what about us vegetarians? Like, can you do something with plants? And I always respond, plants technically count as beef too. And I just leave it at that. Like,
I mean,
I don't even know if it makes sense, but I'll just leave it at that. It's fine. Interpret it as you will. Yeah.
Love it. And any other curiosities that you want to share with us before the end of this interview?
No. I just want to say, thank you to the FakeWhale team. Thank you to Valuart. I think it's just been such an incredible experience to share what's going on in my head with the world and have that relationship with all of these people. I feel so grateful and so peculiar that this many people feel that certain way. So it's been very cool. Legalize ground beef, create nothing, consume everything. We're all headed for a future that's shittier than our past, and it's just time to buckle up and take the plummet. So I'm ready for it.
Cool. And we'll be keeping up with that in your artworks. And thank you. We're so grateful for having you here today. And we can't wait to consume more meat.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Cheers.
Cheers. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure to subscribe. And we'll see you with the next episode.